A clean legacy ban announcement.
Next on Eternal Durdles.
Hello, everybody. Eternal Durdles is celebrating Banmas this year by posting an episode every single weekday in December. That means like 20 episodes. As you can imagine, it is a gigantic lift for me. If you can support the channel by going to patreon.com/eternaldurdles for the low price of $5, you'll be getting an episode every single weekday in December, free of charge. That's just going to happen either way. And you'll be getting ad-free content and a bonus episode every week. So if you can do that, that's great. Thanks for watching. On with the show. Hello and welcome to Eternal Durdles. I'm your host, Zac Clark, and with me this week, very special guest, Cyrus Bales, Crucible of Words. Cyrus, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Fresh out of the shower to record you some content.
Yeah. So this episode actually came from a comment you made in one of our videos, get in the comments, about when you think there will be a clean legacy ban announcement. And that is to say, like, when will Legacy be healthy in a way that they don't need to remove anything or add anything from the format? Not so much, hey, when will they have an announcement that they don't add or remove anything? Like, when will it actually be in a state where we think that nothing will need to be banned or added to the format, and it will actually be the correct move?
That's quite the big question, really, isn't it? That I think a lot of people are thinking about right now.
Indeed. I mean, we all know that some cards got missed this time around. I think everyone has 1 or 2 or 3 or 9 cards on their list that they think should have been added to the format. But there are some glaring cards that I think everyone was ready to see come onto the ban list immediately that they missed, and that's sort of what this alludes to.
Yes, one glaring one in particular. I like a little pun there. Is Glaring Fleshraker. That's certainly one that I've seen bounded about a lot.
Yeah, Glaring Fleshraker, Mycosynth Spawn, Nardu. We could go on, of course, but I think that, there's a wish list here for a lot. I think a majority of Legacy where there's generally a common consensus that there's a lot of cards that still could have easily been added on, and we would have been totally fine with.
So I think in terms of how long it might take, given the current policy that they seem to be doing of just doing the very bare minimum, I think we could be looking till possibly 2026 even. But I do think, having played the format quite a bit in the last couple of days, I've recorded 30 matches so far, and I've found that the format is more enjoyable right now than it was before. So they did do a step in the right direction. I think that needs to be commended, that something did happen. And maybe things shake out and it is actually okay. I'm a little skeptical, but I think getting there is going to be a lot more fun than just immediately losing to a 2-drop creature. So
of course. Yeah,
being able to play Lightning Bolt.
Yeah, Lightning Bolt unbanned. That's the headline. Lightning Bolt unbanned. Lightning Bolt unbanned, 8-cast unbanned. Those are the two that, like, I think were the true winners of this format. But we're looking forward to March 2025, right? I mean, we can almost guarantee at this point, assuming that everything remains as it is, that Nardu is off of the format.
I would imagine so. They've said themselves, it's a design mistake. I think it's the fact that 3 of what I consider the top several decks are all Nardu decks right now. But they do play out very differently, so it's not the most...
True.
It's not the worst thing that could happen. And also, a lot of the time when they start going off, you can just scoop it up. Like 99% of the time, it's not worth playing out. So I think the idea of it being completely miserable, full stop to play against isn't necessarily 100% justified as it was with some things. It's not like you're playing Second Sunrise in Modern back in the day.
Yeah. Where they can, not only can they fizzle, but like mental dexterity there is necessary to like get the win. Where I think for the Nardu decks, like if your opponent draws 8 cards and you're not scooping, you better have a plan. If your opponent just draws 8 cards over the course of 2 turns and you're like, no, I've got this, like it's on you to end that game, I think, at that point.
Like for me personally, I tend to just wait until they've ripped like a Force of Will and blue card and go, okay, so they're going to have my next thing done, and then by the time I get something else, they have that done, and that I can just put it to bed then. But at least the Cephalid Breakfast deck tends to win the turn it goes off with Nardu, because it puts most of its deck into its hand and just goes, oh, here's the Illusionist and we're good.
Yeah.
So
often what happens for me is either I have because it's the deck I play. Either I have the Illusionist combo happening with Force of Will back up in a way to like protect the combo in case somebody has, Fairy Macabre or something, or I just have like 4, or, 3 Urza Saga that just came off the top of my deck onto the board, and like I have to untap and attack. So I think it gets to a point where your opponent kind of realizes that the game is over, and unless you're in like some high stakes event, it's just not worth your time to sit there and stare at your opponent while they try and it's playing all by yourself is not really where I think either player wants to be. So it just behooves everybody if you're just like, okay, yeah, you got it. Like you drew a ton of extra cards and you're gonna get me. Like I guess this 2 to 3 cards in my hand is just not gonna get there.
I also think there are lines to attack each of the individual Nardu decks. So there is something there. I think Breakfast is slightly trickier because they have an Oops, I Win button on turn 2 through the graveyard. But then the Nardu stuff completely ignores the graveyard, which is why I think it's the best Nardu deck, because it just has so much resiliency. And you get to play with all the best spells, right? You get your Plows and your Brainstorms and your Forces. So I think it gained the most from the ban, because Vexing Bauble used to occasionally cut off its graveyard thing, so it had to go through a few little loops to get there. It was still fine.
You'd have to do like the Memories Journey to put the Cephalid on top, or Thoracle on top, and then wait a turn and cast Thoracle, which was, annoying, but the deck could still get there if it had to. And I think we saw, Larson did a great job of showing everybody a masterclass on that deck in the finals of just like how to play around all the stuff that you could possibly play around with it. The deck's very resilient. I think it is in a good spot going forward. I'm certainly relieved that Nardu didn't get banned, just for my own personal preference, so that I can have like maybe a good 3 months of Magic where I'm like, dominating like tournaments. Unfortunately, there aren't any big legacy tournaments coming up between now and the end of March, so it's kind of is what it is.
But I think because you can interact with it a little bit more, and it takes a little bit more time for Nardu than so. Like Psychic Frog is, they played it, and then you had to remove it, or immediately you're behind, and then it just snowballs. Yeah. Like Nardu is, they have the thing, they kind of just win with it once they get the other piece of it, and that's not as horrible as a play experience because it's cutting less things out of the metagame, I would say. So like Vexing Bauble and Psychic Frog, they made a lot fewer things viable. I think Nardu does make things less viable. So if you're playing, so I played some Green-White Depths the other day, and Green Sun's Anything for a 3-drop that isn't Nardu feels like you're playing a very different format to other people. And just like, okay, Knight of the Reliquary, I think that is a card that should always be playable and decent in Legacy. Yeah. But it sure didn't feel like that the other day.
I've had a couple of matches where Knight of the Reliquary or like Ramen Up Excavator gets caught off of Green Sun Zenith, and you're like relieved. You're like, okay, good. Okay, great. This is wonderful.
It's just a wasteland lock few.
So let's move forward in time, right? So let's assume June of something. I don't know when the next ban announcement is after that. So let's say they hit Nardu. What does the format look like after Nadu's gone? Are we now dominated by Reanimator? Like, what have you seen online? What do the decks look like right now? And will banning Nardu affect any of those decks off of those? Like, after it's a relatively small sample size, 30 games, but like, what have you seen?
So I've seen 4 varying Nardu decks, 3 blue-black Reanimator, a smattering of different Storm combos, all different Storm lists, none of them the same. I've seen 3 Painter decks. I've seen 6 Eldrazi decks, which is kind of a big note. So we have 16 combos out of a small sample of 13.
Yeah.
So 6 Eldrazi and 16 combos, kind of like the big headline.
That's 20%.
I played against 4 control decks, and they were not great, to be honest. Like the Bug Beans deck was, Bug Beans is pretty good, but it has like halves of its deck, if you know what I mean. So it has to make sure it can tripping to find the right half. And I think the power of Legacy can kind of exploit that. So I think it's a fair control deck, not like when people were pretty worried about Bug Beans a while back, when Beanstalk first became a thing. And
so that's interesting. Beans is like medium at this point, like as far as the deck is concerned.
Yeah, I wouldn't be embarrassed to play it. Or I might be embarrassed to play it, but somebody who's good with the deck wouldn't be embarrassed to play it.
Have you seen many Orcish Bowmaster since you popped back on? That was a card that everyone was sort of worried about.
Oh, I've seen quite a few, and every time one's been cast, I've been relieved at how little impact it has on a game compared to Psychic Frog.
Well,
I'm just like, oh, this
yeah.
is so much better. There's like play around it. It's just 2 power. You can just, absorb it for a few turns and do your own thing, and it just feels, I'm not
Well, it's
playing
just
as
2
many blue
power
decks
for
at the moment.
you. Yeah.
Yeah.
For guys like me who are casting Brainstorm, guys like Phil who are casting Brain Surge, I think it's more of a menace, but you are seeing them. I would say more probably than you were before, which is a concern right now. Only a concern.
I think I quite like Bowmasters being in the format. I know I'm not necessarily in the majority,
Yeah.
but I think it's a card that is like a very powerful legacy staple, but there is play to it on both sides. And, it's changed the way people cast their brainstorms. And it rewards you for understanding like the context of the game and when you are supposed to actually, ponder into the Bowmasters, because sometimes you do that and that wins you the game. And it's not just like you can't do something like Hull Breacher. There is actually a decision tree, which I think is a healthy thing. And it helps the blue decks against other blue decks, but then it helps the non-blue decks against those blue decks. But it's not very good against the non-blue decks outside of a few like X1s that get cleaned up a bit.
Yeah, that's my preference is to not have it in because it destroys the idea, like the creatures. There's a small amount of what's the word I'm looking for? Like runoff of decks that just can't exist because that exists. Elves being one of them. But the idea that like it punishes like X1s for a deck drawing cards is like, there's so few of those style of decks that can dominate. Now, Cephalid Breakfast is one of those decks, but because they have Core Nomad, they can actually ship the damage around. So there is that too. It's a deck that like is slightly resilient to Bowmaster's plan. But so Bowmasters is a card we're seeing. Have you seen any Mystic Forge decks?
No, I've seen some dual combo, which is kind of like
a
little bit of a sideways version in some respects.
Yeah.
But it's still got the Grim Monolith package.
Surprising now that like Bowmasters has been unleashed that people are going back to the Jewel.
Yeah, I suppose people like trying it and doing different things. I did feel I had a really awkward game against it because I had a Gadok Tegan play, and they just kept playing like copy artifacts and Phyrexian Metamorphs, which don't get hit by it. So I was like, oh,
yeah,
that would have been really good against Mystic Forge, but not here. So
yep,
I still think Mystic Forge is very strong though.
Oh yeah, I think that deck still has legs. In fact, the week before Eternal Weekend, I was playing in somebody who wasn't playing Baubles. He was playing Defense Grids. He was doing quite well, and he did quite well at Eternal Weekend with the Defense Grid version of the deck. He actually preferred the Defense Grid over the Vexing Bauble. I can't say whether or not that's right. I don't play the deck enough to. I suppose the answer is that probably wasn't right since that deck won that exact same tournament. But he seemed happy with the defense grids over the baubles. Eternal Durdles is proud to be sponsored by Moxfield.com. Moxfield is the best deck building website on the internet. You can find all of my and Phil's decks in links below, including decks from this episode. And if you do, you'll be directly supporting the channel. So looking at let's look to June then, and let's say Nardu gets taken out in March. What do you think still needs to go once we hit June? If they're just doing one card at a time, what's the next card?
It's probably something that you cast off of an Ancient Tomb.
I think you might be right.
Or Entomb itself. Entomb is the other one that I think is a little bit egregious because I don't like Reanimator being a splashable package into other decks.
Just 10 cards and now you're playing 2 decks. Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen quite a lot of blue-black Reanimator.
Yeah.
I've seen people running the Duelist of the Mind as a replacement to Psychic Frog, because it lets you bin off your card if you want to. And when you're attacking with your Archons and stuff, it pumps it as well. So it seemed okay. I don't think that's necessarily where it should go, but they smashed me up pretty good. So they were doing something.
I've heard Barrow Goyf is a possible include for this deck too now, as just a main deck. This card's pretty good. It's a little expensive, but days being at an all-time low before this, we'll kind of see where that ends up. Have you seen any lightning bolts since you've been back?
Yeah, I got beaten a few hours ago, in fact, by a Rug Delver player, and it absolutely made my day. I used to be a big Nimble Mongoose fan back in the day. So
Yeah. In
um,
that in the episode with Reed Duke we had, we were asking, like, ban X until ban cards until X is good again. His answer was Delver. My answer was Nimble Mongoose.
yeah. Might be a few too many bans for that one, but
yeah,
I have played it in like last year, I think, or like a year and a half ago. I played some Nimble Mongoose and did okay. I think I trophied with a Mongoose last year, I think.
I think in a world where you have access to Murktide Regent, Nimble Mongoose seems like silly, especially with the options of like Dragon's Rage Chandler is already going to be played in your deck, so then you're rocking, there's 8/1 drops. If you want to replace your Goyfs, there's the Murktide. Then you also have the option of Questing Druid. All these cards are just so outclass Mongoose, and then you have like Tamio if you want to go on that spectrum. Nethergoyf for black. I think that there's just a lot to be. You need to hit so many cards before Nimble Mongoose was a card you were like, "Yep, I'm excited to drop this 1/1 Shroud into play."
Yeah, but like in terms of like what Reed was saying with Delver being good, I played against quite a few Delvers.
That's great.
The last couple of days, so it was honestly a nice, refreshing change of pace. So.
Yeah, I like those matchups because there's this there's this jockeying for position that you have to do in the early turns of the game that determine the rest of the game. And whereas, sure, those decks may have been dominant in the past, I think that dominance is because Wizards realizes that they're okay with like a interactive, like chess kind of format where we're jockeying for position as opposed to like, did I just do these 2 cards? Do you have anything?
Because I play a lot of turbo decks. That's kind of, I run the turbo decks Discord, for example. I'm very into that deck, and it's not actually just the A+B and let's go. You have to have so many like little bits and pieces around it. It's like fine tuning a puzzle, a bit like how some Storm decks are like that as well. And even Breakfast is a good example where it's not just, oh, I just have the A+B. Like sometimes that does happen and you just win.
I mean, if it does, you're playing loose.
But like, yeah, it's the actual having combo decks where you need to respect various bits and pieces going on, I think is...
Oh yeah, I agree.
A good place to be. Whereas, obviously, when we had Vexing Bauble, nobody had to respect anything. So, you could just jam.
So, let's say they get rid of Glaring Fleshraker. What's left on this potential, like, when will, like, you look at, like, September and you're like, it's still not ready yet. We're still cooking. What needs to come off? What's left as far as cards that need to come off? If they're just doing this one card at a time, I'm looking at like June of 2026 till we have a ban announcement that says the format is perfect the way I think everybody wants it. You
mean just before Modern Horizons 4, like the week before Modern Horizons 4? Just before. But like I have a long list of cards I think like it's worth keeping your eye on because I think they could be a little bit egregious. So, like, the One Ring is one that I don't think enough people talk about. Because it does a lot. And, we've seen that it just steadily rose in the decks that was getting played in Modern. And I think it's doing the same in Legacy now. Eldrazi have adopted that, like, every Eldrazi build has some One Rings in it now when it didn't before. And it's just sort of slowly increasing. And I wouldn't be surprised to see people getting annoyed by that one.
Yep.
Then, all the Eldrazi stuff, your Myco Spawns and stuff like that. I also think Eye of Ugin is something that people don't talk about enough. Because I've had games where my opponent has just untapped with nothing on board, just like a land, or like 2 lands, then played an Eye of Ugin and generated 8 mana off of 1 land that turn. And some of that is down to some other cards that are pretty gross, like Fleshrake or whatever. But it's not uncommon to see it tap for between 2 and 8 mana. And that is, that's like...
Doesn't even tap.
Academy level. Yeah, exactly. If you've got the Yavimaya, you can get a little bit extra.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that is something to... And playing a Nexus, like, that is giving people to just jump straight from, like, 1 mana to 4 mana. Which is obviously a big break
it's
point.
Wild that, like, Urza's Tower is a card that, like, people... It's like Modern Tron is creeping into Legacy, but only one of the cards. Like... The
So,
power
like,
of Nexus to like allow people to play a card that's like, please play these other two cards that are slightly less good alongside of it is pretty wild.
well, there was a Tron player at Eternal Weekend, wasn't there? Like good old full on all the Tron
Yep.
lands. So
Yeah. Yeah.
there's
Going
something
all
in
the
that.
way in on that plan, just being like, I'm just going to play 7 mana Karn.
Well, like if you've got a planar Nexus, you know, all your other ones are still soul lands, and that's pretty darn good. They're better
Pretty
than
good.
City
Pretty
of
good.
Traitors
Yeah.
to that point.
Yeah. And you have access to, I don't know if they were playing crop rotation or not, but when you have access to crop rotation, just knowing that you can get it in there immediately and have the like the key piece to your deck is pretty amazing.
I
8
think,
planar nexuses in your main deck, you know.
yeah, it doesn't hurt, does it? I think another card that people tend not to really consider that much. I know there's a few people who are a bit disgruntled about it, but it's the new Tamiyo.
Yeah.
I don't think it needs banning now at all. It's perfectly within the level we're operating at. But the play patterns on it are not the best because you just kind of flip it on turn 2 and you can sit behind it and it basically just wins you the game on its own.
Yeah.
And part of what it does to the formats, which I think is really interesting, is if somebody's relying on these Tamiyos, they're not actually pressuring their opponent's life total, which means that Ancient Tomb decks aren't being punished, which then has a knock-on effect of making the Ancient Tomb decks feel stronger.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas
Yeah.
like Delver plus Lightning Bolt, all of a sudden Ancient Tomb decks are like, clenching in their seats.
Yeah. Yeah, that I think that's sort of one of the things with the unbanning of Lightning Bolt that will kind of play out over the next couple of months is whether or not these Ancient Tomb decks can keep up with the Dragon's Rage Channeler, Lightning Bolt, Delver style decks re-entering the metagame. And if the answer is yes, then I think we have to look at the the Ancient Tomb decks, Mystic Forge decks, Eldrazi, of course, and say, what do we need to change about this, because they're still very, very good and maybe too good for this Earth.
I agree. I also think that once Nardu leaves in our hypothetical future, I think it opens up a lot more mid-range strategies, which then can prey on various things. So you'd have the combo decks that kind of go underneath your like green-white depths or whatever. But then those decks can just grind all the tempo decks that are preying on the other things. And you end up with sort of a healthier meta game and a nicer environment where everyone's got some stuff they're going to be good into and bad into, instead of just being like, oh, you turn up with death and taxes, why are you here?
Yeah. Sort
of thing.
I wonder, I don't know if they I'm sure somebody in Magic Online, data spaces can tell us, what's the average turn that the game ends in Legacy. I wonder over the course of the next month or two if we'll see that goes down. I mean, the answer is there is a number. I just don't know what it is. And if that number increases to above, like, turn 3 or turn 2 or whatever on average, which I don't think it's turn 2. That's silly. But if the average number of turns for a deck to win in this format goes up just a little bit, I think that's healthy for everybody.
So from my limited sample size so far, I have noticed that games are being stretched out a bit longer, even against some of the combo decks. It's been, nobody's making Karn Microsynth Lattice on turn 2 like we saw at the Eternal Weekend, whatever. So things have slowed down a little bit because people have to respect the hate. And people are also just, trying different things out at the moment. We don't know quite what the format will look like, but I think we are seeing a slight slowdown. And like you said, I think that's a very positive thing. And maybe they have got it right. I'm suspicious that they haven't, but I'm willing to be wrong. I would love to be wrong in this situation.
I would love to be wrong on this too. I think I agree with you. I think that they have some more room to improve the format. But I think that it would be amazing if it was just like, actually this format's pretty great right now. I have gone a month and been like, the format seems amazing, and then like a month later I'm like, whoa, everybody missed this one interaction and now the format's garbage. And that's how I felt like at the end of this last 3-month cycle. Is like in August I was like, the format's looking better, maybe just getting rid of grief was enough. And it quickly became apparent over the course of like a month and a half that like, no, Vexing Bobble's a real problem. Psychic Frog's probably warping the metagame to blue-black a little too heavily, that sort of stuff. And they got those right. So, I think I said to Phil, when you're so used to starving, the bare minimum feels like a feast. And right now, I'll take the bare minimum. So, yeah, I think it would be amazing if they did just get it right, and we get to the next band announcement. They're like, format's looking great. The metagame's pretty diverse. The Nardu decks have not taken over tournaments like we thought they would, and we're just gonna let the format fly. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Like that would be cool.
Yeah, I don't feel that is the case, but maybe some new technology will happen. We've got new sets on the way as well. You never know.
Indeed, yeah, something from Aether Drift might change the whole game.
Maybe more people buy lots of cursed totems, and we see those everywhere.
Yeah, so, cursed totems. There's a card, Steely Resolve, I think is the name of the card, that makes all creatures shroud, which is an interesting one. But I think that's like only lasts a turn, or it's a creature type, right? Target creature type.
It's some classic Turbodept tech. I used to board it in against Cephalid Breakfast during the sort of the White Plume Adventurer days when that was in Legacy. So you just put it on Wizard and they can never target their Cephalid.
Yeah.
But normally you want to put it on Avatar to save your Marit Lage. But, it's nice when something has multiple applications.
Yeah. I mean, and if you can get 2 down, then you can say Encore and Wizards, and then all you have to do is worry about your constructs, and,
Yeah.
There you go. I mean, if they're getting past 2 Steely Resolves, they kind of deserve to win, I feel like.
Yeah, that's true. Like I had a game like that today where I had Pithy Needles on various things, and they just happened to have the one that I didn't have, and it was all over. It's like, do you name? So your first needle probably names the Nomads, but does your second one name Teferi, or does it name the Shuko?
Yeah.
I've
been very lucky that my opponents have been successfully not choosing the right thing that I have in my hand for their Pithing Needle, and I'm like, it's the other one.
It's an important
which is always
to have.
it's a great feeling, but yeah, it's like I feel like I didn't deserve this win, but you didn't soul read me, so maybe I have no soul.
So what you're saying is we need Gitaxian Probe back so that people can
I heartily agree with that. Actually, I think we do need Gitaxian Probe back. I think the format was better with it. I actually am more on the stage that if you're going to ban something like that, it should have been Thoughtseize, just because Thoughtseize is actually proactive and does stuff. But like, I'm not out here saying you should ban Thoughtseize. I'm saying you should unban Gitaxian Probe.
It's certainly an opinion, that one.
Yeah. I mean, look, I know I'm in the minority on that one. But Cyrus, it's been great having you on, and I want to have you back right before I want to have you for the ban and restricted announcement because we missed you on the last one. But I want to have you right before the next one to just be like, what do you think? Do you think they got it right? Do you think that are we good? And get an idea of what we think the format looks like, and then get your prediction. So right now, what is your prediction? We're looking at what, like every 3 months is a ban announcement. When do you predict that there will be one that like is overwhelmingly agreed with? Like we didn't need to remove anything.
I think there will be one next year.
Okay.
I don't think it will be March. So I think we're going to get Nardu in March, but then I think it will either be the one after or the one after that.
Okay.
So not really committing fully, but I think we'll get to an okay-ish place where some stuff is annoying, but not quite over the line, which is tolerable.
I'll give you the 6-month period in between the June and September ban announcements.
We're
going to end up with a clean one. Yeah. All right. Fair enough. I think that's a fair assessment to at least guess from for this one. But yeah, it's been a pleasure having you on, and it's awesome to have you on as this is your first episode with us, so that's great.
Pleasure to be here. So.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for watching. Hit the buttons, do the thing, share the stuff, and we will catch you next time. Thanks so much for watching. Before you go, I need some help. Please subscribe to this channel and do your part to help sustain the Legacy content ecosystem. Just subscribing to this channel goes a long way to reminding YouTube that people love and support this format. Now, if you really want to go the extra mile, you should think about supporting us through Patreon. Both the links for subscription and Patreon are right here. And if you're listening on an audio format, you can go to patreon.com/eternaldurdles. Thanks so much for watching.